For the third time, I asked her to marry me. And for the third time, she left me standing there in front of all our friends. All because her quote-unquote best friend, Caleb, called to say he had a fever. I told her that if she walked out that door, we were done. It was the first time I'd ever said it. Chloe, however, didn't seem to take me seriously. She probably thought I was overreacting, figuring I'd come crawling back in a couple days like I always did. She shot a few angry words at me, turned on her heel, and left. I stood there, the pity in my friends' eyes burning holes in me. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked away, feeling like a ghost. In that moment, I knew she wasn't my sun, but for the first time, it felt like the sun was finally shining on me. 5 years. It was time to let it end. I stepped out of the apartment building into the falling snow, a single thought echoing in my head. Let's be done with this. Of course, it was never going to be that simple. 1. The sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air at Denver General, and the fluorescent lights overhead cast a pale, unforgiving glow. I've been working 2 jobs to keep up with Chloe's lifestyle, and the exhaustion combined with the bitter cold had finally caught up with me. I had a fever. Now, I was curled up on a bench in the ER, the saline and fever reducer in the 4-bag dripping slowly, each drop a painful reminder of the diamond ring I'd almost given her, now shattered like my hopes under last night's snowy sky. Just after midnight, my phone screen lit up the darkness, stabbing at my tired eyes. It was a text from Chloe. "Ethan, Caleb's stomach is killing him again. I'm really worried." She had no idea my own head was on fire, my forehead slick with a cold sweat. My hand clenched into a fist, yanking the 4-line. A sharp sting shot through the back of my hand. I looked down and saw it was already swollen and bruised, the skin around the needle a strange, pale green where the fluid had leaked. A passing nurse noticed and hurried over, muttering, "You have to be more careful." I ignored her. My eyes were glued to the picture in the chat. Caleb was wearing the deep gray cashmere sweater Chloe had bought for me, lounging on the very same custom-ordered couch I'd helped her pick out. His pale face was bathed in the warm glow of a lamp, making him look like some fragile piece of glass that needed to be handled with care. It was laughable how many times I had made excuses for scenes just like this, for both of them. A 99-degree fever, and he needs to call an ambulance. And now a stomach ache. Right. A hoarse laugh escaped my lips, echoing grimly in the empty hallway. I swiped over to my photo gallery, my thumb landing on the doctor's report from last week. Immune system dysfunction due to extreme fatigue. Bed rest recommended. The day I got that report, Chloe was busy helping Caleb decorate his new apartment. She didn't come with me, didn't even glance at the report when I got home. She never even saw the prescription bottles I left on the kitchen counter. But none of that mattered anymore. We were done. I was free. Sometime during the night, the snow outside had stopped. Moonlight dusted the ground like a thin veil of silver. The 4-bag was empty, just like my feelings for Chloe. A nurse, gentler than Chloe had been in years, removed the needle. The irony wasn't lost on me. A complete stranger was showing me more care than the woman I'd loved for 5 years. Stepping out of the hospital, the cold air hit me like a slap in the face. I shoved my hands into the pockets of my down jacket, my fingers brushing against the velvet box from Blue Nile. I was suddenly grateful I never got the chance to open it. You feed a dog for 5 years, at least it wags its tail. She never gave a damn about my feelings. It was pathetic, really. I passed a 7-Eleven, and my reflection in the glass door showed a face flushed with an unhealthy red. A dark scratch snaked across my neck from where she'd grabbed me last night, looking vicious under the stark lights. I remember the conversation at the proposal party. When I demanded to see Caleb's doctor's note, Chloe had shrieked like a cornered animal. "You have no idea what trust means." Then she slammed the door on her way out. The sound was so violent it made everyone jump, and the Van Gogh print I'd painted for her, a replica of sunflowers that I'd stayed up for 3 straight nights to finish because she said she wanted our home to always be filled with sunshine, shook violently on the wall. What a joke. By the time I got back to the apartment, my friends were gone. The festive balloons and the happily ever after banner they'd hung on the wall felt like a cruel mockery. I didn't have the energy to take them down. I just texted a quick apology to everyone who'd been there, then dragged my exhausted body to bed. I was out in less than a minute. It was a skill I'd always been proud of, my ability to fall asleep instantly. I just never imagined I'd be using it under circumstances like these. 2. The next day, bright sunlight streamed through the window, waking me. I blinked, realizing Chloe hadn't come home. The old me would have blown up her phone, sent 100 frantic texts asking where she was, if she was safe. I'd almost called the cops once. Looking back, my love had become obsessive, twisted. But now, it was her life. It had nothing to do with me. I showered and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were still bloodshot, my face gaunt, but I looked a hell of a lot better than last night. Maybe this was what it felt like to have a weight lifted off your shoulders. After getting dressed, I called my landlady, Mrs. Gable. I told her I wanted to break the lease, that I needed a change of scenery. Not wanting the hassle of finding a new tenant and returning my deposit, she immediately offered me another, similar unit she owned in a different complex across town. For a second, I almost joked about asking if she was looking to adopt a grown son, but my rational mind thankfully stopped me. I looked around the cozy apartment, once filled with our laughter, now just a hollow chamber of disappointment. Time to go, I muttered to myself. I grabbed my suitcase and packed only the clothes I bought. As for everything else, the furniture we'd picked out together, the decorations, she could have it. It was time to let the past be the past and start over. With my suitcase in hand, I took one last look at the apartment I'd lived in for 5 years. "You can have the place," I said to the empty room. "Rent's due in a few days anyway." I turned and walked away. The door clicked shut behind me, closing the book on 5 years of my life. On the way to my new place, I grabbed a couple of breakfast burritos from a food truck and washed them down with my fever medication. The pills were bitter, but for the first time in a long time, my heart felt light. 3. It didn't take long to get to the new apartment. It was in an older building in Baker, with a dim hallway and peeling paint on the walls. The apartment itself was small but clean. I spent the afternoon getting settled, buying some essentials, and grabbing lunch at a nearby diner. By the time I had the place set up, putting up a few of my favorite posters and arranging the trinkets I'd brought from the old apartment, it was starting to feel a little like home. As evening fell, I decided to go get some dinner. Then it hit me. I'd left my ID in a drawer at the old place, and I needed it to sign the new lease agreement tomorrow. Great. I quickly ate some takeout noodles, hoping I could just run in and out without seeing her. The last thing I wanted was to ruin my surprisingly good mood. I unlocked a Lime scooter on the corner and headed back toward Capitol Hill. The night air was crisp, stinging my face. The yellowish glow of the streetlights stretched my shadow long and thin behind me. When I got to the building, I looked up. The lights were on. Damn, she's home. Through the 5th-floor window, I could see 2 figures moving, their shadows tangled together. So, she wasn't alone. Probably one of her friends. I scoffed and headed upstairs. I reached apartment 502 and pulled out my key. The moment I slid it into the lock, I heard Caleb's voice from inside, thick with a fake whine. "Chloe, what if your boyfriend comes back unexpectedly?" I froze, my hand still on the key. Their voices were unnervingly clear through the door. "Don't worry about him, Caleb," Chloe cooed, her voice like warm honey. It was a soft, gentle tone I hadn't heard her use in 5 years, dripping with affection and a desperate need to please. "He's probably out somewhere working his ass off to make money for me." The metal key dug into my palm. My nails bit into my skin. Last night, she'd used that same syrupy voice on the phone. "Ethan, sweetie, Caleb's stomach hurts so bad. I think his ulcer is acting up. He needs me." And my 102-degree fever didn't need anyone. I couldn't believe how two-faced she'd been, and how pathetic I had been. The sound of rustling fabric followed, then Caleb's smug voice. "You really are something, Chloe. No wonder Ethan is so whipped." "Don't talk about him." Chloe's voice turned to ice, the shift so sudden it sent a shiver down my spine. "He doesn't deserve it. If he hadn't insisted on proposing right then, you wouldn't have had to pretend to be sick to get me out of there." A sharp ringing erupted in my right ear, like someone was twisting a screwdriver into my eardrum. 5 years of feelings don't just vanish, but at that moment, my heart was turning to stone. My love for Chloe died right there in that hallway. This is the girl I loved for 5 years. My hand moved on its own, pushing the door open just a crack. I leaned down and peered inside. Chloe was looking down at Caleb, their faces so close their breath mingled. "Careful your boyfriend doesn't get jealous," Caleb taunted. Chloe's laugh sounded like glass shattering on tile. "Him? He's just a walking ATM?" He actually had the nerve to say we should break up last night. Please. The motion sensor light in the hallway clicked off, plunging me into darkness. I counted my own frantic heartbeats. 37. Then I heard Caleb again. Well, you can't forgive him too easily this time. By the way, I heard that Blue Nile ring is worth at least $5,000, right? Absolutely. Chloe's voice was full of arrogance. Then it softened again. As soon as I get my hands on it tomorrow, I'm returning it. With that money, I'll take you somewhere really nice. I felt sick. All this time, I was just her simp, her bank account. No wonder Caleb always had a perfectly timed emergency whenever we had a date or I tried to get serious. It was all a scam. Looking at her now, she wasn't even all that. How had I been so blind? Suddenly, the anger drained away, replaced by an ice-cold clarity. I had no desire to kick the door in and confront them. The money I'd spent on her for 5 years, fine, considered a long, expensive rental. But this wasn't over. They made me miserable. Now it was my turn to return the favor. There was no point in listening anymore. I pushed the door open. Creak. Caleb and Chloe were on the couch, about to get into something much more intimate. They whipped their heads around, their eyes wide with shock as I walked in. Chloe scrambled up, a look of pure panic on her face. Caleb, on the other hand, was strangely calm. He just sat there, looking at me with a detached, almost arrogant expression, as if I was the one interrupting something sacred. For a second, I wondered if I was wrong. Does a purely platonic friendship between a man and a woman actually exist? The thought was immediately dismissed. As a man, I know men. Hell, even eunuchs in ancient times had desires. There was no way. Chloe finally composed herself. She lifted her chin, stepped in front of Caleb, and looked me straight in the eye. In the past, that defiant look would have crushed me. Ethan, don't get the wrong idea. We were just playing a game. Caleb remained silent, but his eyes were full of provocation, as if to say, yeah, and what are you going to do about it? Seeing I wasn't responding, Chloe's expression soured. Her fake concern vanished, replaced by anger. Stop being so childish, Ethan. Caleb wasn't feeling well, and I was just trying to make him more comfortable. Don't you trust me? She snapped. And another thing, why aren't you at work right now? How are you supposed to provide for me if you're not working? Look at you. We have no future. Not like Caleb. He's already driving a Porsche. 2 days ago, her words would have sent me into a spiral of apologies. I would have begged her to forgive me, but I wasn't that man anymore. I held up a hand. Save it. I don't want to hear your bullshit. You two continue. I just came back from my ID. I walked past her, not even giving her a second glance. Her face twisted in disbelief. What's with the attitude? She yelled at my back. I'm telling you, if you don't apologize right now, we are breaking up. I stopped and turned. We broke up last night. But if you didn't hear me then, fine. We're broken up now, too. You bastard, she shrieked, pointing a finger at me. I go to take care of Caleb, and you want to break up with me? Is a proposal more important than his life? Are you even human? Oh, right. Caleb, a 99-degree fever. Such a high temperature. If you'd gotten there any later, it probably would have gone away on its own. It's better that he's okay now, but what if it had gotten worse? Gotten worse? I sneered. The way you two were wrapped around each other just now. I'd say your temperatures were rising just fine. Maybe you should both get checked out before you die from sheer sleaze. She canceled on me 9 times out of 10 for him. It wasn't a coincidence. Caleb finally stood up. Hey, watch how you talk, Ethan. Chloe and I are just friends. I won't let you hurt her. Stop. Just stop. I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. Do you two even have a conscience? Just stay away from me. I don't want to catch whatever you have. I grabbed my ID from the drawer and turned to leave. I didn't lay a hand on them. I could just imagine the drama they'd create if I did. Wait, Chloe's voice, sharp and commanding, stopped me at the door. Since we're breaking up, you can leave the Blue Nile ring as compensation. Then you can get the hell out. Otherwise, don't ever expect to hear from me again. She held her head high, already dreaming of the cash she'd get for it. Idiot, I muttered, glancing back at her with contempt before slamming the door. I left them standing there, staring at each other. How dare he? I could almost hear her say. For a few days later, my romantic life was in shambles, but my career was taking off. All those years of hard work, combined with the new, singular focus I had since the breakup, finally paid off. I was promoted to manager. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Gable. Hey, Ethan. Your ex moved out today. She actually tried to get your security deposit back. I told her I already gave it to you. You should have seen her face. It was priceless. LOL. I smiled. The nerve. A follow-up text came through, informing me that Chloe, being short on cash, had moved in with Caleb for the time being. I replied with a simple thanks. My phone buzzed again. A notification from my bank. My paycheck had just been deposited. I stared at the number for a few seconds, realizing it was the first paycheck that was entirely mine. No more funding Chloe's designer bag addiction. No more footing the bill for her platonic dinners with Caleb. The feeling was surprisingly good. After work, I decided to stop by Bluebird Coffee Roasters, a place I used to frequent. The glass door reflected my tired face, but these past few days, without the stress of a second gig as a delivery driver, I'd been sleeping better than I had in years. No more late-night food runs for Chloe. No more listening to her complain about her job. The moment I pushed the door open, the rich aroma of coffee and the sound of soft jazz washed over me. I was looking for a quiet corner when a familiar figure caught my eye. Caleb, that self-proclaimed best friend. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his hair perfectly styled, gallantly pulling out a chair for the woman across from him. Her back was to me, but I could see she had long, dark hair that fell to her waist and a tall, slender frame. Caleb's face wore the same fake, ingratiating smile I'd seen him give Chloe 1,000 times, his eyes glinting with calculation. A few minutes later, I heard him say, "It was a real pleasure meeting you, Ms. Reed." His voice was a low, intentionally gentle murmur. "I hope we can do this again sometime." The woman stood up, and I finally saw her face. Maya Reed. She was a legend back in college, 2 years my junior. The line of guys trying to ask her out used to stretch from the lecture hall to the main gate. She was wearing a simple white dress, but it made her skin look flawless. She was even more stunning than I remembered. "The pleasure was mine, Mr. Vance," Maya said with a polite but distant smile. "I'll think about it." As she turned to leave, her eyes met mine. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "Ethan Miller." She walked over, looking at me with disbelief. "You look different." I knew what she meant. The fresh-faced kid from campus was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he'd been through a war. "Maya Reed. Long time no see," I said with a small smile. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the color drain from Caleb's face. He looked panicked. Maya seemed to notice. She glanced back at the frozen Caleb, then back at me. "You two know each other." "You could say that," I said non-committally. "Are you two?" "A blind date my parents set up," she said, rolling her eyes with a hint of exasperation. "Just going through the motions." Caleb quickly walked over, plastering that phony smile back on his face. "Ethan, small world." Maya, check her watch. "Oh, I've got to run, but we should catch up sometime. Let's exchange numbers." Under Caleb's murderous glare, Maya and I swapped contact info. She hurried off, and I could practically feel the relief radiating from Caleb, who was clearly terrified I was about to expose him. "Caleb," I said calmly, "you're a busy man, living with Chloe and still finding time for blind dates." His face contorted with rage, but now that Maya was gone, his smug confidence returned. "Don't tell me you're still jealous over Chloe, Ethan." He used her name with a feigned intimacy. "She's so happy living with me. She told me you were always so cheap. You wouldn't even buy her a decent purse." I gave him a dismissive look. "Is that so? Well, congratulations on picking up my second-hand goods." A flash of anger crossed his eyes. He lowered his voice. "Don't pretend you're not torn up inside. Chloe told me everything. How you got on your knees and begged her not to leave on proposal night, like a pathetic dog." He smirked. "She's mine now. You mad? All you can do is rage about it, can't you? Huh?" Suddenly, the man in front of me just seemed sad and pathetic. "You know, Caleb," I said with a slight chuckle, "I've had a revelation recently. Chloe leaving me was the best thing that ever happened. After all," I looked him up and down deliberately, "anyone willing to take my leftovers clearly has terrible taste." "You?" His face went purple with rage, but before he could say another word, I turned, grabbed my coffee from the counter, and walked out. Even as the door swung shut behind me, I could hear him sputtering behind me. "You just wait, Ethan." The next morning, the smell of disinfectant and medicinal herbs hung heavy in the hospital corridor. I stood in front of the check-in kiosk with my follow-up appointment slip, The flashing numbers on the screen, a staccato rhythm against the dull throb in my temples. Suddenly, a figure in a black mask and baseball cap burst out of the urology clinic. The man's black overcoat swirled around him, and I caught a glimpse of a familiar silver cufflink, the same pair Caleb always wore. He was hunched over, practically running for the elevator, the metallic click of his shoes on the tile floor echoing like a frantic escape. He was a world away from the preening man in the tailored suit I'd seen yesterday. On a bizarre impulse, I stuffed my appointment slip in my pocket and followed him. Just before the elevator doors closed, I saw his knuckles were white as he clutched a medical report, his nails digging into the paper. Once the elevator descended to the parking garage, I turned and walked back to the urology department. I ran right into my old classmate, Mark Shun, who was just coming out of an exam room, taking off his stethoscope. "Mark," I called out quietly, glancing around. The attending physician badge on his white coat gleamed, reminding me of long nights studying together in med school 5 years ago. "Ethan." His eyes widened in surprise behind his glasses. "What are you doing here? You look terrible." "Just a follow-up for that immune system thing," I said, gesturing vaguely toward the internal medicine wing. My throat felt dry. "Listen, I just saw a friend of mine come out of your office." He looked off. "Any chance you could tell me what's going on?" Mark pushed his glasses up his nose. He was silent for a moment, the sound of medical instruments clinking in the room behind him. "All I can say is, it's erectile dysfunction, and it's severe." He lowered his voice. He admitted to long-term use of certain performance-enhancing drugs. It's likely affected his nerve function. At his age, it's probably irreversible. A thrill, sharp and electric, shot through me. So, that was his secret. Mark, misinterpreting my reaction as concern, clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry too much about him. Just take care of yourself, man." Walking out of the hospital, the spring sunlight felt blindingly bright. The leaves of the sycamore trees rustled overhead, shattering the light into 1,000 golden fragments on the sidewalk. My mood was euphoric. This was better than I could have imagined. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Maya, recommending a new coffee blend. I stared at the blinking cursor on the screen and started to laugh. Some secrets, it turns out, are like dandelion seeds. They find a way to sprout in the most unexpected places. A week later, at dusk, Maya pushed open the ornate wooden door of the coffee shop. Her hair was damp with a fine mist, and the hem of her white trench coat was still dripping. She clutched a manila envelope, wrinkling the paper. "After you told me about Caleb, I had someone follow him for 3 days," she said, setting her cup down so hard that the amber liquid sloshed. "Ethan, you have no idea who this guy really is." I stirred my iced Americano, the clinking of ice cubes the only sound between us. Maya slid a series of photos across the table. In one, Caleb was on one knee in front of a sprawling mansion, fastening a pearl necklace around the neck of a woman easily in her 50s. In another, he had his arm around a different heiress at a high-end club, a Patek Philippe watch gleaming on his wrist. The Porsche was a gift from his sugar mama. "The company is just in his name," she said, her eyes flashing with anger. "And my father called him a promising young entrepreneur. It's all a lie." Her finger tapped on a photocopy of the diagnosis report and the photos of his infidelity. "I'm sending this to the rich old woman. Let her see what kind of parasite she's been keeping." I put my hand over hers as she started to dial, our reflections overlapping on the glass tabletop. Outside, the city's neon lights flickered to life, shattering into a galaxy in her eyes. "Hold on," I said. I leaned closer and quietly laid out the plan I'd been forming. Maya's eyelashes fluttered. A slow smile spread across her face, a dimple appearing at the corner of her mouth. "You've learned a thing or two about strategy, Ethan. Letting someone else do your dirty work for you. I like it." Late that night, we were tucked into a booth at a 24-hour cafe, the air thick with the sweet smell of sugar. Condensation on the window blurred the street outside, but gave us a clear view of the apartment building across the way. At precisely 10 p.m., a black Mercedes sedan cut through a puddle and parked at the curb. A lavishly dressed woman in 10-centimeter heels stepped out, flanked by 3 enormous men who looked like walking bodyguards. "Showtime," Maya whispered, squeezing her bubble tea so tight the straw made a muffled pop. The sharp click of the woman's heels echoed in the night, punctuated by the building security guard's futile attempts to stop her. The lights in the fifth-floor apartment flashed on. We saw frantic shadows moving behind the curtains, followed by the distinct sound of shattering porcelain. We held our breath as the security guard rushed upstairs, only to retreat 5 minutes later, looking defeated. When a disheveled Caleb and a terrified Chloe were dragged out of the building, Maya stifled a laugh. His diamond-studded belt is still hanging around his neck. It almost looks like a leash. The moment the sugar mama shoved him into a taxi, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Maya's friend with a screenshot of an Instagram story. It was a picture of a Porsche key fob next to a Chanel bag, with the caption, "Taking out the trash, feeling refreshed." The location tag was a luxury car dealership. "Want to follow them for the gossip?" Maya asked, her phone screen illuminating her eager face. I watched the taxi's taillights disappear into the rain. "No," I said softly. "Some shows are best when you only watch the climax." A month later, I was in a new hire training seminar at work. Maya was at the front of the room, presenting a marketing strategy. She had the sleeves of her white blouse rolled to her elbows, a silver bracelet jingling on her wrist as she gestured. After the meeting, she caught up with me by the window. The evening sun cast golden stripes across her face through the blinds. "I heard Caleb ended up with 3 broken legs," she said with a sly blink. "And Chloe had miscarriage. Major blood loss. The doctors said it'll be difficult for her to ever get pregnant again." I stared out at the magnolia tree swaying outside. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. 3 words, "Can we talk?" Maya glanced at the screen and made a face. "You're not actually going to reply, are you?" "Of course not." I deleted the message and put the phone back in my pocket. The sunlight streamed through the glass, catching in Maya's dark hair and turning it the color of honey. Some doors, I realized, have to close for good before the right one can finally open.